Amsterdam had the most beautiful Jewish area. The Jewish area in Amsterdam, it's unbelievable how wonderful that was. It was the most beautiful, wonderful country to live for a Jew. And this is gone, and that will never, ever come back.
Was your home observant, traditional, secular?
My home was pretty well traditional. And my grandparents, they were very religious. And I always went with my grandparents to synagogue and Shabbat and everything.
Did you have any close non-Jewish friends?
Oh, yes. Yes. As a matter of fact, in Holland there are very, very few black people. And it so happened that one of the very, very few was one of my best friends. And this actually happened to a very, very crazy, funny thing. That boy was walking through our street, and I never saw a black person in my life. So I was about, I think, 12 years old. And I asked her, what are you doing here? She said, I'm going there. I said, you're not. I said, you turn around and you go back where you came from. You're not going through my street. He said, yeah, but I'm going. I said, no, you're not going. Anyway, we got into a fight, and we were fighting and fighting and fighting. And then as we were fighting, I said, what are we fighting about? And as a matter of fact, he did become my best friend. And that's how I learned at a young age already not to discriminate. I went to a school in Amsterdam, and that's actually how it starts. In one district, all the kids in that district have to go to that school. So that means that mixed Jews, non-Jews, were in one classroom. We didn't know any difference from Jew, non-Jew, Catholic, Protestant. We didn't know that. Then it didn't take too very long that everybody had to come and register. Everybody, regardless whatever you were, you had to come and register. And when you came and registered, then they had for you, in front of you, they gave you this paper here. And as you see here, my fingerprints is on it. And I was fingerprinted. I was only, at that time, 18 years old. And I was fingerprinted. And I had to bring a picture. And the picture was put on this paper here. And when I got it back, as you see, on both sides here on the bottom and on the top is a J. And of course the J stands for being a Jew. And this is something that everybody in Holland, Jew, non-Jew, had to come and register. The difference is the Jews got the J on it. And this had to be folded in three. You had to have on your person at all times, that whenever the Nazis would ask for it, that this was then the ID that they knew you were Jewish. Over and above, all Jews had to wear this Jewish star on their shirt and on the jacket. And if you take off your jacket, it had to be underneath, it had to be on your shirt. But at all times, all Jews had to have this Jewish star sewn on to their clothes. This way they could recognize that you were Jewish. The Jewish neighborhood was completely cordoned off with big billboards. And here is a picture of myself standing underneath one of these billboards, and there is marked there, of course, here is marked Judengracht, that is a Jewish canal in German and in Dutch. And right underneath that very little sign here is marked for the German soldiers, and there is in German is marked on it for Wehrmacht verboten. That means that the German soldiers shouldn't go into that neighborhood because Jews are living there. Then they had also all kind of billboards on the wall with proclamations, with all kind of rules, what Jews were allowed, what they're not allowed. And then they had, of course, also propaganda. And this here is a picture that I took myself. I was driving on my bicycle, and I had a little box camera, and I very fast clipped that picture, and then I ran off with it, and this picture came through the war. This is the eternal Jew. And there is marked on it also in Dutch, also you have to go and see this picture, which was, of course, propaganda to the non-Jews, only trying to make more and more anti-Semitism. What I did, I started to work in a hospital. And working in that hospital, I got on this ID card this stamp from the Nazis, which was put there by the Sicherheitsdienst, by the SS and the SD, with the stamp on it, as you can see, and with the signature of the man in charge. And on it is marked that the holder of this ID is till a later date exempt from going to that work camp. So I was working in a hospital to get this stamp, because then you were so-called essential and they needed you. And on the day that that big raid was in Amsterdam, and it was May 1943, I went from door to door to door to just, not now by the list to pick them up, but now they took everything. But that was from 42, October, November 42, till May 43, that they did that by list. But then, May 43, they rounded just everybody up. Now,
That included yourself.
I was in the resistance. And being in the resistance, I was always on the street. I was doing all kind of things. Jewish people were in hiding. We had to get these people, then the papers, to be able to escape from Holland to countries who were free, who were not occupied by the Nazis. And to do that, I had, for instance, to go into public places, doctors' places, other public places where people hang up their coat, restaurants or whatever, and I stole these ID cards from non-Jews, because Jews were not allowed in these places anymore. I stole it out of the pockets. But I needed these cards, we needed that to make falsification, to put another picture on it, because on these cards were no J. And with a card without a J on it, they had a chance to cross the borders and get to these free countries. I went to The Hague in hiding. I had a family, a Catholic family, who took me in hiding. These people were friends of my father. And they took me in hiding there. I arrived there, I think it was October 43. I got to The Hague, and finally there I was in hiding for 18 months. For 18 months, long time, I was in an attic. Was caught after 18 months. We were given away. The Dutch collaborators came and they took us out of the place there. And I was taken to Westerbork concentration camp. In Westerbork, I got this card here, and this card is the ID card of Westerbork, the identification card. And because of the fighting that I did and the running away, and with those two guards, they put an S on it here, and S in Dutch means straf, and straf means punished. So when I arrived there, I was immediately interrogated by the commander of that camp, by, I think his name was Hauptsturmführer Gemmeke, but Gemmeke was his name, that I know for sure. And he interrogated me, and he wanted to know about other resistance fighters, which of course you don't tell. And then they put me in solitary, and I don't know for how long I was in there, still don't know. Dark, no window, no nothing, hardly any food. And after they took me out of there, I was put in a punish barrack where people, resistance fighters and all these people were punished, had to do very discriminating work. I was sentenced to so many months in that barrack to work. And then later I had to work outside in the field. Around 1 o'clock, we were told by the guards to stop working, and we had to go back to the concentration camp. I said to my body, I said, that's it. They're coming too close. They're going to take us back to the camp. They're going to finish us all off. So we were marched back, like always, 5 rows, 5 on 5. We were marched back to the concentration camp, to Westerbork, and we were told to stay in the barracks. And when it was completely dark, I escaped from the concentration camp. After I came out of the camp, I walked in the direction of the noise that I had heard. I knew that I was going toward the German fighting lines. I came, and I didn't know how, through the lines, the fighting lines. I came to a canal, and I swam across the canal. When I came out of the canal, I had a rifle or a gun or whatever it was right on my head. And of course you put your arms up right away to show that you're not fighting them back. My first thought, of course, was the Nazis had me again. But then I heard people talking English to each other. I gave a sigh of relief, and I kept my hands up, and I told them that I was a Jewish person escaping from concentration camp. And I told them that I escaped from Holland, from the concentration camp, from Westerbork, and that I had walked through the night. Westerbork is a Jewish concentration camp. There is about 1,000 Jews held in the camp there, and that he said, that's not true. I said, what do you mean that's not true? This is not a German concentration camp where Jews are held. This is a military camp, military barracks. And we know that because the reconnaissance planes from the Allied forces, they have seen military movement there. So you are a collaborator. And they called me a collaborator with the Nazis. We are in the process of bombarding it and with artillery to flatten it, because it's a military camp. And then I asked to speak to a higher in command, through the interpreter. And when I got to speak to a higher in command, I told them that I will hold you responsible after the war for killing roughly about 1,000 Jews who are being held by the Nazis in Westerbork concentration camp. At that time, he went on the telephone and he called his man in command, which later on, of course, I got to meet, and that was Brigadier Allard. And Brigadier Allard decided to send me back to Westerbork with a 6-man patrol to check it out. He didn't want to take a chance. And we walked back, but they walked me between 2 up front and 4 in the back of me, because they didn't trust me. But when we ran into German resistance, they found out soon enough on whose side I was, because we had to fight our way through. And after we eliminated the ones that we ran into, and we came to the concentration camp Westerbork, at that time they found out, of course, that it was a concentration camp with Jewish people in there, and they had one man we had with us with a radio pack on his back, and he radioed back that it's true, there's Jewish people here, there's only prisoners here, and they called off the bombardment. But I got my BA, and then I went to Canada, because I was liberated by the Canadian Armed Forces, and I think they just won me over. I had to go to Canada, and that's why I'm still living in Canada. And then in Canada I started to work, first as, actually I couldn't get into Canada that easy, because I had to have a certain trade. So I understand that in a year's time I could get certain diplomas like autogenic welding and gas welding and electric welding. And I got my diplomas in 1 year, and that's how I got to Canada. And I started to work in that field for a little while, and then I went over in my own trade in the textile industry. Because that's what I did after the war, go into the textiles, and that's what I learned too. I got all my diplomas in textile. And then I continued that in Canada, and I became a salesman in the textile industry. I worked for a big textile mill, and that I have done till I retired.